Today is March 29th, Wednesday. We are here with incredible poet and all-around wonderful person, Matt Sedillo.
Oh, thank you.
Who's here live from Los Angeles, California. And my name is Paul Ortiz. I'm director of the Oral History Program. And Matt, first of all, thank you so much for making the long trip out here to be with us.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Can you tell us about, unfortunately last night, I wasn't able to make the poetry workshop. Can you tell me kind of what your experiences were, like what your goals were, and like what happened at the workshop?
What happened with the workshop was we were able to share some poems, and I had each poet give each writer, and in becoming a writer, they became poets, or even if they weren't already, they already had it in them, I guess. I had them write poems about the community they grew up in, about how it shaped them, how it shaped their parents, and then eventually how they tended to shape the world one way or another. Because the way I look at it, whether we change things or keep it going the same way, we're going to be the ones to shape the world. I mean, without us here, these are just ruins. I mean, if you think about that way. Like I like to think about, like, sometimes I think about like Teotihuacan, right? Like, without Mayans, there's no Mayan civilization, like one way or another. Like, whatever happened, without Mayans, there's no Mayan civilization. So without us, there's no country, there's no people, there's no whatever. It's just a bunch of ruins. It's a ghost town, right? And so I think about that. And so, like, one way or another, we're gonna be the ones that shape the future because we're gonna be the ones that are gonna be there. And so it's a workshop about holding on to the things that give you strength and using them to confront the things that hold you back, or the things that are these larger forces that kind of weigh on you. So the reason we have them write about themselves as children, they write about themselves as children to figure out when it was they first realized that they were who they were in this society. And then they write about first they write about the community, just describe it, right? What it looks like, how it is. Then they write about themselves as children. And understanding when they first got an inclination of how people saw that community, or how that community saw the rest of the world. Then they write about their parents, and how their parents were shaped by those same forces, or what forces they were shaped by. Because oftentimes we just think of our parents as we think of our parents as a mountain, or the sun, or stars, and not as people who are also shaped by things that are bigger than themselves. And then they write about themselves as adults, and how they're going to shape the world. And that's what I had them do. And before each person reads a poem, I have the next person comment on what they enjoyed about the previous person's poem. So that's what we did. Most poets, when they run workshops, they just kind of like try to dazzle people with how good of poets they are, which is so funny. Like, if you think about like a computer programmer, if they were to lead a class, they'd be like, watch me code. Like, they wouldn't do that. They would actually lead the class, right? So I think sometimes people in the creative field, they don't quite get that. I don't quite get that. Even like music teachers sometimes don't get that. Even when it's more explicit, but poets really, really don't get that. Really don't get that for some reason, for most part. But so I try to make it about them, not myself. And then,
is that about the nature of our society? Because, for example, like in the days leading up to your workshop, I would tell the students, okay, now this isn't going to be a passive thing. Y'all are going to be expected to write. And a lot of them were like, well, no, I don't do that. I don't do poetry. I don't, that's, a poet is someone who's like up on a stage or something. And it was amazing to me because some of these students had read, we started this semester at Down These Mean Streets by Perry Thomas, and we watched a film titled Every Child is Born a Poet, in which he says over and over again, but even after that, they're like, oh no, there's this divide, there's people on the stage, and then there's us passive watchers. Like, is that something about our society?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of pretense. I think there's a lot of things about, I don't know if it's about unique to our society. I think there's a lot of like mystification of the division of labor that comes to professionalization, right? So let's say we're working with a certain set of tools, and in order for us to achieve a certain goal, certain labor needs to be done. There's no reason why it has to be one person versus another, right? For the thing to get produced, right? The job does need to get done, but there's no reason why it has to be this person versus that person, right? Whatever that thing may be, whatever the goal is to accomplish. but we get in our minds all this specialization, all this like, you do that, you do this, you do that. And, and there's some truth to the development of skills and stuff like that. But the idea that I can't develop those skills, there's no way I can do that. I think that's just the way we're conditioned to do it. And people aren't very helpful in terms of making it seem that way. So like, for instance, I write poetry, right? And it behooves me to convince people they can't do what I do. It behooves me to convince people that I am the only one that can do this, that I have this unique skill that they do not, because I have to make my way in the world of commerce, right? In the world of coins and of sticking them in my pocket. So I can't have them know the grand secret, which is that they can too. But that's one way of looking at it. I mean, and there may be some truth to that, but the reality is there are so many universities across the country. I mean, the world that I'm involved in is not that scarce, so that I don't actually have to do that. And even if I did, I wouldn't. You know what I mean? Like, even if I did, I wouldn't, because I'm not gonna eat a full plate while someone else is starving. I'm just not gonna do that. So,
but at some earlier point though,
yeah.
there was probably like a younger version of Matt Sedillo who was walking around thinking, well, I can't do that, or maybe that's for someone else. But what was the first point you remember where you started thinking, hey, I can be a poet, I can do this?
Yeah, well, I'm very ambitious, very combative, and very driven. So like, there's things about me that make it unique, that make me a little more, capable of being like, I can do that, and I can do it as good as anyone, right? And those levels of confidence. Sometimes they're real, steady, self-belief, self-assuredness, and not, it doesn't become conflated into anything else. It means I have this skill, I know I have a skill, and I'm confident in the skill, I've developed it, I'm good, right? And I'm more in that space than I used to be. In the past, it would veer from extreme arrogance to extreme insecurity, And in those times, when it was a question of extreme arrogance versus extreme insecurity, I find that I was drinking a lot. I was just very self-destructive, and I find that the further apart how I felt about myself and what I said about myself were, the more unstable I was, and so now I feel like I'm much more like these points, these poles of like, I'm the greatest piece of person, I'm the greatest whatever, to like, nobody understands my genius, and people that think other people are better than me are fools, like that, to, over here where I was like, I'm a piece of shit, nobody cares about me, who cares, like, oh, I hate myself. The running between these two poles is narrowed to here, right? So like, now I might say something in the middle of lunch like, God damn it, you show someone who could do this better than me. And I'll show like one little thing that I know I'm good at, I'll like, show me someone that does a better historical montage in a poem than me. Show me one person, right? And and I'm pretty confident with that, in my ability to do that, to list a wide breadth of history in a poem, and I'm pretty confident that I can do that at a level that's amongst the best, amongst the very best. And I know I can do that. But that doesn't mean that like I'm like some great hero over time or anything like that. It just means that I can do that, yeah. And I'm confident in that. So it varies between that and to all the way over here, where it's like, man, I really should have turned that manuscript in by now. What is stopping me? What is preventing me? Why am I not doing this, right? So it goes from I'm very confident in my ability and maybe a little overconfident, and ready for a humbling, a little one. To I know that I'm not being as productive as I really can, right? But it does not veer from, God damn it, I'm one of the greatest people in history and everyone doesn't know it and they're all fools. Oh, I hate myself, no one will ever love me. It doesn't veer from there to there anymore. Yeah. It veers from slightly overconfident, maybe a little cocky, maybe a little obnoxious, to being a little too hard on myself. And that's it, and everything stays in between there. So, I can live with that. I can live with being a little cocky sometimes. I can live with being a little too hard on myself sometimes. Right. I can't live the other way. So,
I want to get us to El Sereno because it was and a sharing experience that you and I had. We talked a little bit about this yesterday,
Yeah.
where the first time I think you and I like met physically, was going there to Eastside Cafe.
Yeah.
But one of the things I forgot to share with you was that when I was there with Don and Jonathan Gomez and other people, I took a lot of photographs of murals and art and talking to people and stuff. And I brought those back. And at the time I was teaching a class which was like 99% Miami students.
Yeah.
And a lot of them grew up in like Little Havana, like these Little Haiti, like these iconic neighborhoods in Miami. And they were just like so stunned. They were like looking at these murals and they were like, why can't we have murals like this? Like, and they didn't even know who, and I had to explain to a lot of these people were like, here's Corky, here's Rudy, here's all these people. They knew, like, they kind of knew, most of them I think knew like Cesar Chavez. They could like recognize him. But they're like, in our neighborhoods we have murals of like LeBron, and why can't we have something like this? And it was just so amazing to like compare those two places. I mean, the students were doing it. It didn't occur to me to do that comparison. But I wonder if you could talk about like what it's meant to you to come from a place like El Sereno.
Well, yeah. I mean, it meant a lot. I mean, it's still like, I want to just quickly say something about what you just asked. I mean, like if you go to somewhere like Humboldt Park in Chicago, right?
Yeah.
You'll see murals of like Campos, murals of the guy that just got released, Lopez.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He'd been in prison for years and years.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Lopez Rivera, Lily LeBron. So you'll see these things of historic, struggle, right? And put that up on the wall. The political climate of Miami would never allow for the historic struggle of the Cubans to go up on a mural. I mean, someone would set that building on fire. I mean, given what it is, they're not going to have like Cienfuegos, a mural like Cienfuegos and like Castro and Guevara, given Florida politics. So that's kind of, I feel like the reason why. And it's not that, I feel like many young Cuban Americans who are born here are less like that. But that's, to me, that would seem why. I mean, that would seem the number one reason. So I just want to just like be really clear that it's not necessarily just a Mexican thing, or it's just whatever, that there are particular reasons why that would be that way. I feel, but growing up on the east side of Los Angeles, and just being near there, circa there, my whole life, for most of my life. I lived in Dallas for a little bit, but it's meant a lot to me. It's really rooted me. It's grounded me. I'm never more than half an hour away from Boyle Heights or El Sereno or East LA or City Terrace or any of those places. Those are really iconic places that mean so much. I mean, it's so funny. We talk about like a diaspora, right? In general of different groups, but I almost feel like Chicano culture is one of those weird like diaspora of the east side of Los Angeles, because all the movies and all the things are about that. And I don't want to say, I know that you get in trouble saying things like that. And I don't want to say, because everyone has their own pocket of culture. Everyone's added, and there's amazing things that people have added. But just think about the movies like Blood In, Blood Out, or like, and maybe it's manufactured. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, like, you get into weird territory when we talk about how much of culture is manufactured versus organic, right? Because like, well, who are you to say something's manufactured versus organic? Someone put like right now I'm being filmed. Is this manufactured? I mean, because there's a camera there. Does that make it manufactured? So life is life. So. I don't know, but there's a lot to it. There's a lot to being from that area. I was talking to somebody the other day, and he had this ring, right? And he was telling me that the ring was an Aztec king, right? And I was like, what are you talking about? And then he started talking about like, he's like, I'm Mexicano. He's all proud. And I'm like, all right, man, well, where'd you grow up? And he told me he grew up in a small little town. And we started talking about where he grew up, and I started talking about where I grew up. And I could see that he was reaching for something, grasping for something. And he was proud of where he was from, but it was a different experience because like I grew up in an area where there are like millions of us. And we've been there for generation upon generation upon generation upon generation, and have left a certain imprint on a city, which has created an imprint that is global. I mean, they have people dressing like, like doing like lowrider shows in like Japan now. It's a global thing. And so, and I come from there, and and so the sense of being from there, being from somewhere, it's strong. It's strong. And I don't ever want to I don't want for it to turn into like chauvinism, like where it's like, oh, this is whatever. But it means a lot to me, and I love that place. And it's interesting though, because I did an event not too long ago, and someone told me they were from South Pass, right? Or they said they were from South Pass. They made a big thing. Oh, I'm from South Pasadena, blah blah blah. And then later on, I walked up to them. I'm like, oh, that's cool. You're from South Pasadena. Like, I'm from El Sereno. And they were like, and they didn't want to talk to me. So I was like, holy, all right. Like, because on the one hand, to the world, nobody knows El Sereno, but but to the world, like the east side of LA, they know what that is. They know East LA, right? Yeah. But not to say no one knows El Sereno, but they wouldn't differentiate most people outside of that area. But if you are from that area, you know exactly what El Sereno is, right? And if you're from South Pasadena, you know what it means to cross over that Charlie's Trio. So it's it's interesting. El Sereno is so fascinating. Like on a particular level, there's the general question. There's a general way I would answer that for somebody that was asking me that question that was from a different part of the country. But the specifics of it are interesting because El Sereno is the kind of almost the northernmost tip of the east side, and it peaks into the San Gabriel Valley. It's the border between the east side and San Gabriel Valley, and the first two towns in the San Gabriel Valley are South Pass and Alhambra. South Pass is kind of more upper, has more money, and then Alhambra is a little closer to El Sereno, but they're kind of worlds apart sometimes because a lot of the money from El Sereno gets directed into LA. That doesn't happen so much in Alhambra. They keep their resources, even though the income level is only about $5,000 to $10,000 median income per household, right? But they're worlds apart, and it's an interesting thing. It's an interesting lot of rivalries, tensions, all kinds of things, ethnic tension type stuff, because things that go on with that. It's a very interesting place to be from. But San Gabriel Valley is also very interesting that people don't really talk about because it is it's like this weird series of buffer states, right? Because here's El Sereno, and then you go in Alhambra, right? But then beyond Alhambra is San Gabriel, and beyond San Gabriel, San Marino. And San Marino is actually wealthier than Malibu. It's wealthier than Beverly Hills. It's one of the wealthiest areas of Los Angeles. I mean, you have to go. There are wealthy places you've never heard of. Most people never even heard of, like Hidden Hills, that are wealthier. But there's very, very few places that are actually as wealthy as San Marino. Right? And San Marino is also one of these places that most people never heard of that is extremely wealthy. But it's sandwiched inside the San Gabriel Valley. And it has a series of places that keep it away from poor people. It has these upper middle class areas that surround each pocket of it. It's got San Gabriel, Rosemead, a few other places that that block it off. Rosemead blocks it off from El Monte, which this one blocks it off from Monterey Park, which blocks it off from here, from there. So it's kind of it's a really fascinating thing. But then El Sereno itself, within El Sereno is a place called Hillside Village, and Hillside Village is supposed to be the upper echelon of the east side or something like that. So it's seen as oh well, this is better than East LA kind of thing, right? We remember we're here, but it was better. So there's all kinds of just where things are historically placed, not in the context of what it means to somebody who is living in Minneapolis, or someone who's living in Des Moines or something like that, or somebody who lives from a different context, and everything kind of oh, that's L, and even not even them being antagonistic or oh, I don't like those people. Just generally speaking, oh, that's that area of the world, right? That's where all these people live, or oh yeah, that's where that movie came out, right? There's that, but understood on its own terms, and with its own neighboring communities. It's a fascinating place.
Yeah.
All places are fascinating, though, if you sit down. Yeah.
Well, a lot of people get their, like you're saying, it's interesting because they get their introduction to this place, broader place called East LA, through the writings of Luis Rodriguez. Yeah. And I wanted to ask you, because I know you've worked with him, what that's meant to you creatively and personally.
It's meant a lot. It's meant a lot to have someone like Luis in your corner, and I don't know. What does it mean to me? I mean, like, there's so many things that go through a person, and so much it requires to try to make your way in living as an artist. That it's interesting. It requires you to have a weird combination of things. It requires you to be, it requires you to be sensitive enough to look at the world and cull meaning from it, and then spit it back out. Right? To input that information in your head and then put it back out in a way that is artistic and in a way that is emotional, in a way that, like, stirs something in somebody else because it stirred something in you first, right? That takes that. That's what it takes to be an artist. What it takes to be a working artist is having the stomach to have doors slammed in your face all the time and to continue working no matter what. You know what I'm saying? Being a working artist requires you have the stomach of a worker, period, right? And you put away your artist heart and you put on your worker stomach, right? You put on your worker hands, you put on your worker shoes, you put on your worker, like, mentality of, like, okay, I'm going to do this as work in a capitalist market, which means that, you're doing it under duress and under whatever, and nobody cares about your feelings. They care about they care about the feeling you give them when you're on stage. They don't care about how you feel about getting on stage. Nobody cares. I mean, people do care, but institutions don't care, and paychecks don't care, and the landlord doesn't care. And even if they do care, they still need that check. And even if somebody does care about you, whatever, they still need you on that stage, or the event's canceled and they don't look good. So, like, no matter what it is, the show must go on, and that's business, right? But to even produce the show, to have the wherewithal to produce that, is humanity, right? And so it's a very hard thing. So that's what it just requires to be an artist. So to be an artist and then have Luis in your corner, I mean, I mean, like I say, things are interesting in relationship to her, right? Because I remember when Luis gave me this quote saying, Matt's great, whatever. And I was like, I have Luis' quote. And it meant so much to me at the time because Luis was, like, not a person. Luis was like a figure, right? And then I got to know Luis better, and he became more of a friend, and still a mentor. I still have tremendous respect for him and what he's done. So he still is that, right? But then I remember, and then I looked at his website, and he has a quote from Bruce Springsteen. So it's like this kind of thing doesn't end, And so that was really interesting to me. I was like, okay, Bruce Springsteen probably has like a quote from, like, Nelson Mandela or something on his website. So, like, it doesn't really end. So, like, that was kind of like what was going through my mind. But working with Luis has been great, and having him in my corner, or having him, I should say, in my corner, but working with, he's not in my corner. I mean, he's somebody that
I mean, you've done workshops together.
We've done workshops together. We work together, working with Luis. It's not like in my corner. Like, I could say something like Urea, right? Urea has given me good advice, and Urea has been really kind to me, and really, in times of, like, what do I need to do here? I've asked him a couple questions here and there, and he's been very helpful. So Luis Urea is in my corner. Luis Rodriguez is someone I actually work with. I mean, so that's a little different. I don't know. It's if you ask me what it's like to work with Luis is a really kind and generous artist in his work. The way the rhythm of how he does things, and how he makes space for you, and then also, like, steps in with his space. He's to work with, it's almost like if you like equate to, like, dance, he's a great dance partner. Like, if you want to get down the technicalities of it, he's great. What does it mean to me to work with somebody who is as accomplished as Luis, right? It's pretty profound, and sometimes I try not to think about it too much. I try not to think about that stuff too much, because it gets me into weird headspaces about, like, who am I, where am I, what do I, and then it makes it difficult to lead workshops because, everyone's a poet, right? Not like you're the fucking grand poet. I don't like getting into that too much. But every now and again, it's like I reflect on it. It's like, damn, I can't believe, like, I'm here now, right? Because I'm working with Luis Rodriguez. But I'm not just working with Luis Rodriguez. I'm working with Luis Rodriguez because I am Matt Sedillo. Mm-hmm. And, like, that is a good thing to reflect on rarely. Not too often, because it gets you in trouble. So that's kind of like where it's at. I mean, we were at an event one time, and this goes to my own psychology. We were at an event one time, and he was getting an award, and he talked about, like, said, we in our community, we Chicanos, we get a bad reputation, or people say we have a bad reputation as being crabs in a barrel, that we're always trying to bring each other down, and I don't feel that's the case. And he started saying that Cisneros helped me, Juan Felipe helped me, and there's a young man in the audience, and I'm working with him, and everyone's familiar with the work of Matt Sedillo, right? And I was like, wow, like you just like created this like lineage to me, and that was like really profound. But there were people in the audience who were upset by that because they don't like me for one reason or another, right? Maybe legitimately don't like me. I don't know. Maybe I did something. I don't know. Not perfect, but so, or maybe they're just haters. I mean, like they're not perfect either. But they didn't like me, right? They didn't like that. They don't like me. There's like 100 people in this room, and I'm focusing on the 3 that like appear to be bitter, And there's something in me that always makes me focus on like, why is that person? Like, why are they saying bad? Why are they being negative towards me? This is something, no. And so that's what it's like to be like an artist, I think. Like, it's always like focus on these things that are just not, they're just really, that's what it's like to be a working artist. That's what it's like to put your art into the world. It's not only part of the creative process. That's part of the world of being judged and weighed and measured and like, does your work stand up to such and such and such and such? Are you mediocre or are you one of the greats? Are you just a flash in the pan? Are you hot right now? Will your work stand the test of time? So on and so forth, And it gets you into these weird headspaces, And
Well, it's amazing. Luis would, when he's talking about lineage, I'm thinking of, one of my favorite all-time books, and it was a book that I often assign for this course. We didn't read it this semester, but Music of the Mill.
Yeah.
Where he's talking about these generations of Mexican-American, Chicano, like working-class people.
Yeah.
And so thinking about like that, the cross generation. So are you thinking about the next generation of like poets or people that you're thinking about?
More and more I am. I'm 35 now, so I'm starting to think about it.
Old man.
I know, I'm an old man, right? I'm getting that age where I'm starting to think about like people being young and what does that mean that they are young and I am not. I don't feel like I'm old, but I don't feel like I'm young. I just am. Like I'm in a period of my life where I just am. And I kind of feel like the years of like between, 35 and 50, I guess, are kind of like the years that you do the things for which you will either be remembered or not. and that is where I am right now. And I have to do those things and not get out of my head and just do them and whatever. But I also feel as though I should be mentoring as well. But then some part of me feels like, maybe that's something that comes later. But then I'm getting in my head again. I'm planning these things all out. I think it's better to just do things and see where they go. I try to be as encouraging as possible to other artists, to people that want to create, and
That's what the students are saying here. They're like, wow, this person is not acting like. What I've heard from the students so far is they're like, it's incredible. Matt Sedillo, he's not acting like an icon. One of the students said. Yeah. Who came from the workshop, which unfortunately I missed, but I saw the students coming out.
Yeah.
And you left them with that sense of, or you didn't leave them with it, you helped them kind of mutually discover the fact that they can become writers.
Yeah.
It's really hard in this kind of university environment because like you're saying, the students are not really encouraged to write here. They're encouraged to like write a paper, like for a professor, but then they get the paper back with like a ton of red ink, which the message says you can't write. Right? And so you're already instilling in them something that they're thinking, wow, maybe I can do this.
Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. Like that, I don't know. You are very good at what you do. And you take the time to do it, and it's not easy work, and it is what it is, right? And you put the work in. So I feel like you operate with a lot more security than a lot of people. Oftentimes I feel like a lot of people who are in the positions of professors have to justify their job. So they, here's like a bunch of red ink on your paper because I have to tell you why I'm the professor, why I'm here, and I'm the one with a piece of chalk in my hand, and you're the one sitting down right there, right? And if that can't actually be justified, you're gonna like do the whole red ink, right? But if you take a job seriously, and it's not about the performance, it's not about acting as though you're doing a job, it's actually doing it, actually going out of the way to produce things of like in-depth quality, and someone can pick up a book written by Paul Ortiz and be like, I did not know that. What I just read, I did not know before I had read it. You have done the job of a historian, right? And so you don't have to perform it. You don't have to perform that I'm the teacher, you're the student, you don't know anything, when you actually are somebody who goes out in the world and finds out things that people, very few people know, and you cull it together in a place where now this information stacked on this information stacked on that information, if you actually produce something that someone said, I never knew that, or I did know that but never looked at it that way, so on and so forth, you've actually produced something, right? If you're not going to be productive and you're going to just point out degrees on a wall and justify them, then you're going to fill someone's paper up with red ink, right? And so similarly, I try to actually write, quality work. I try to actually do the work. I actually try to be places, because what I've done is actually it is what it is. It's like, wow, that was, you wrote things that were this way, and I always try to write in a way where it doesn't feel like anybody wrote it. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, that to me is my favorite kind of stuff, right? Like, I like Bob Dylan, I like Leonard Cohen, I like these people that write things that are very idiosyncratic, and it's like, oh, that's kind of like, they kind of went in these kind of like different directions. Or even like Prince, right? It's so whatever, right? But like, I also like Smokey Robinson, or like Michael Jackson, or like the band The Strokes, or like the Rolling Stones, or like these people that write songs that feels like nobody wrote them. They were just there. Of course they're there. Of course, right? And so that's why the way I try to write, I try to write in ways that are just like, with phrases that are simple, but like stone, like, this is not a democracy, it's not a republic, this is the State of the Union, they're killing our children, right? Yeah. Right? Now that took so much to write that.
Talking about Oliver Stone.
No, that's a poem I wrote.
Oh, no.
Let's Here's Nation. It says, This is not a democracy. It's a little excerpt from it. This is not a democracy. This is not a republic. This is the State of the Union. They are killing our children, right? And like, just to write like that, to write in a way where it's really like, that took so much editing and so much whatever, but these are like really simple everyday phrases, but ordered in a certain kind of way that just flow, and they make sense, and they look easy, but it's not easy. It looks easy. But Los Angeles is full of abuelas who raise grandkids in Spanglish under the watchful eye of Cuauhtémoc, the Virgin, and Jesus. Sounds easy, looks easy, it's not easy. It's not easy. I made it look easy, and that's what I try to do with my own writing. And because I'm confident in my own writing, I have no need to fill people's paper or minds with red ink, And so that's why I feel I can go and talk to these students and show them that they too, with a certain level. This is not an illusion though. This is not like, oh yeah, you're all great writers without editing, without thinking about what you're going to do, without whatever. No, I'm going to give you the tools to write something in a very quick period of time, because I'm going to give you narrow prompts, but you're going to fill it with your life. I can't put your life in you. That's already there. But I'm going to give you narrow prompts into which to fill your life, right? If I pointed out a glass of punch, a bowl of punch, and I said, bring me some punch, there's no cups, what are you going to do? You're going to stand there confused and like, well, do I bring him the whole bowl and try to pour it in his mouth? Or I hand him the bowl? How's this going to work, right? If I hand you a cup and I say, pour me a cup of punch, you can walk over there and pour the punch in the cup, right? So when you're trying to simultaneously figure out how to do something and what to do, your mind is just like, you can't do it. It's very difficult to figure out what to do and how to do it simultaneously, right? In any circumstances, right? Like you have a child falls on its head, you're like, oh my God, like you're freaking out, right? Because you know that you need to take care of this emergency. How do you take care of this emergency? It's like, it's right? Your mind starts going off, right? But if you're a paramedic, you know exactly what to do immediately. So you knew what to do, and you also knew how to do it. So what I try to do is tell them how to do it. what to do. I mean, I tell them what to do. I mean, I tell them kind of like what to do. And what and how is kind of similar because I'm telling them these narrow prompts. But like, what information is going in there? What punch they're going to set in there? Whatever they can pour their own lives into it, and that could look any kind of way. What I really don't like is a lot of poetry workshops where people just kind of like talk about like write a feeling, like write blue or like something like that. Right? It's so like ethereal. I give them very concrete prompts, very, very concrete prompts, and then I get out of the way. And so what they produce is always amazing.
Good afternoon. Today is March 29th, 2017. My name is Oliver Telusma, and I'm the research coordinator for the Latino Diaspora in the Americas Project. I am here with Matt Sedillo, a renowned poet based out of Los Angeles. So thank you for being here. We really appreciate you.
Oh, I appreciate having me.
So just to start, I would like to discuss sort of your political views and how they've kind of stirred controversy. So how have you been able to navigate going to college spaces whose opinions may be different from your own and still remaining true to yourself?
Well, how do you stay true to yourself, right? That's kind of a separate question. Like, how do you stay true to yourself? You stay true to yourself by remaining true to yourself, right? So regardless of what's going to happen, you're going to do a certain thing. I'm more careful now than I used to be. I don't want to get anyone fired. I don't want to get anyone whatever. So I clear with people that are bringing me in what I'm going to do. But if you give me a green light, I'm going to take it, right? And so, and I will do what I will do. And as far as my political views, I believe in the abolition of private property. I'm a straight up red. I don't believe in this kind of, with the election of Donald Trump, there's been a lot of like this like tension and a lot of this. Within kind of like the left community, about like what does it mean about people who supported Donald Trump and these people from the Rust Belt and don't abandon them and da da da. No, I'm not like that. I mean and if somebody decides that they hate me because of the way I was born, then I hate them too. Like it's pretty simple, right? So I don't believe in colorblind class struggle. I mean, if somebody hates me for reasons that are completely for reasons that I share with my mother or that I share with whatever that have nothing to do with my political ideology, have nothing to do with the way I will look at the world, but simply because of the conditions of my birth, the conditions of a people that I belong to, well then yeah, we got problems. And I don't care what you think about other things. Like that thing right there created problems between you and me, and they'll be settled, because I was born in the east side of Los Angeles, so that's the way it is. But that's kind of where I come from, but like, or where I'm coming from. My political views is I believe that we need a different society, one that actually empowers people, and it's not even that it empowers people. People aren't empowered, period, right? Because there won't be a condition or a group of people to empower anyone. You can't. There's no way I can empower you over your shirt. That's your shirt, right? I can't empower you over your shoes. Those are your shoes. They're already your shoes, right? So society would belong to people. So there'd be no one to empower them. It would be theirs, period, right? And so that's the kind of world I believe in. And I think that, I try to stay current with what's actually happening in the world. And more I see that technology is progressing in a way where people increasingly don't have to work in order for things to get done, right? And you have more and more automation in production, distribution, and services, right? Where machines are doing more and more of what was traditionally human labor. And under capitalism, under the market system, under the wage system, that means go die. You're no longer necessary to produce these things, to move these things, to sell these things, to be that point of contact. So you can go die. And under those conditions, that's not good. But if we had a situation where we had automatic production plus automatic distribution, meaning people just got things as they're born, then you could have an automatic economy. And out of an automatic economy, you could have a society that was really free. People that were free to pursue what meant to them. So those are my political beliefs. And I find that when I go around talking about automation, I find that when I talk about that kind of stuff, there's much more of an open ear, right? It's when I start talking about things like, things that can be labeled, that there are problems, that people want to fight, people get angry, and they're like, I can't believe this person was brought to our campus, right? And so that's when these things happen. But when someone tells me fighting words, those fighting words come back to them, Because my in terms of like conflict, I'm of the political theory that I don't give a damn, just so long as there's a clear line to the exit and the car is running. You know, like that's where I'm coming from.
All right, so you discussed a little bit about automation. So how have you seen kind of automation and kind of the globalization of really the world's economy and certainly the economy of the United States affect your home of Los Angeles, and how do you incorporate that into your work?
Well, okay, so the city of Los Angeles is still one of the major industrial areas of the United States of America. People don't kind of know that. I mean, the economy of Los Angeles is so big and diverse. I don't just mean the population's like ethnically diverse. I mean the actual economy is diversified, right? So it didn't fall apart the way somewhere like Erie, Pennsylvania might, or Youngstown, Ohio, or even the biggest example, Detroit, Michigan. It didn't fall apart the same kind of way because it wasn't like running on one industry when certain things started going. But you could see the decline in the standard of living, because there are machines that can now do people's jobs, and if you try to fight so hard for your wages, you are no longer necessary in the way that you once were. And this plays out all over the place. I mean, plays out like with the stevedores in the ports. This plays out with teachers who can be replaced not just by the charterization, but also by what are called MOOCs, which is just like this computer, like one teacher and everyone's got a computer and they can like whatever. So like,
and you've seen that in LA?
Oh yeah. LA is one of the really big hotspots for charterization, right? See, the destruction of public education is taking many forms. And so in a productive economy like Los Angeles, where there's still a lot of money going on and still a lot of people kind of necessary, you see charter schools in just massive numbers. But you take a place like Pennsylvania, like Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, right? You see charter schools, but you also just see the massive closure of schools. You will not be educated because you will not work. You're not going to fix our cars. You're not going to whatever. You know, those people over there will fix our cars. You're not the group of people that will fix our cars. You're not the group of people that will serve us. So you don't need to go to school. In Los Angeles, that's not quite the case yet. It's not as far along in that process as most of the country is. But you see it in the standard of living. Like 40% of LA can't afford to live in LA. 40% of people in LA can't afford to live with a modicum of however they measure these things, a modicum of just human decency. 40% of LA cannot afford to live in LA and not be in poverty. You know, and New York, I think the number's like 60%. So I mean, like these are some of the major cities of the United States of America, and people are struggling. And if people in LA and New York are struggling, what does that mean for the people, you know, in Tallahassee? I mean, what does that mean for the people in these smaller economies? You know. So
how do you incorporate that narrative into your work?
How does that narrative get into it? The question of automation, most of my stuff is written from the perspective of someone that was born at a certain point in time, right? Okay. And facing the certain economy that I face. A lot of my work is. And the fact of the matter is that I kind of fall in this weird range where I'm not quite a millennial and I'm not quite Gen X. I'm like somewhere in between, right? I'm like either the youngest member of Generation X or the oldest millennial. I'm kind of in between, right? But when I entered the economy, which is like maybe like 2001 or so, right? I'm in a different position than someone who entered the economy in 1990. And I'm in a different position than someone who entered the economy in 2010. And definitely a different position than someone who will enter it in 2020. And you just see this gradual decline in the standard of living of people. The big comparison everyone makes is between the boomers and the millennials, right? Because it's so drastic. But what gets lost in this conversation is the question of Generation X. Generation X had a worse standard of living than the baby boomers, but a better standard of living than millennials. So when you compare the baby boomers to millennials, it just seems like something happened in the economy and who knows what it was, or maybe the millennials were lazy, or maybe the baby boomers were harder work, or maybe those blah, 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 which you create this like boomerism, right? That they had a better work ethic and you were so lazy. So this is kind of so fascinating to me to watch a group of people who like have high school diplomas and got jobs as like bank executives talk about their children going to college and getting the wrong degree, and that's why they're living on the couch. Like you're a high school graduate who became an executive at a bank, right? And that's not to denigrate them. That's just to say it's a completely different economy with different requirements, you know. And you have this group of people over here who are so well prepared, the most educated, formally educated group of people with like the least job prospects, right? But in between them is Generation X, who was the first group of people to be called slackers, was the first group of people to be called like, the song Beck by Beck, Loser, was supposed to be the anthem of that. And so you see like this kind of like this question of a continual thing. So whatever's going to follow the millennials is going to be worse than the millennial condition. Because it's not a question of these two generations of boomers versus millennials and why did the boomers do so well and why are the millennials struggling so much, and like here's my deep economic analysis or here's my just blanket disgusting generalizations, or either of those questions. No, it's you're witnessing a downward spiral of the economy because there are fewer and fewer jobs and more people. And this idea that there's going to be an economy of the future, right, which is why you need to go learn tech, all this kind of stuff, that is just nonsense. Facebook employs 5,000 people. Twitter employs 4,000 people. Google now employs 50,000 people, but most of those people work at YouTube. Google itself only had like something like 10,000, right? So we're talking about the 3 largest internet companies in the world employing less than 100,000 people. You know what I'm saying? Now, how many people worked at Ford? How many people worked at GM? How many people worked in those industries? I mean, we're talking millions of people, right? And also talking about millions of people that lived in America for the most part, like on the height of the American economy, and then during the expansion of the American economy. If you're looking at the today, people that work for these tech companies, they draw from the whole planet of 6 billion people, right? They're not drawing from 300 million people who live here. We're talking about 100,000 people drawing from the entire planet. And so like that job of the future is not coming. eHarmony has more questions on their questionnaire than they have people in the building. They have more questions of compatibility than they have workers. They got like 200 questions of like, of should you be with this person, and only 136 people working there. So like that economy of tomorrow is not coming. It's not coming. So what does this mean? What does this mean? What will it mean? Well, I can only say that where things are today, they were not 10 years ago, and where they are today, they will not be from 10 years from now. It's only going to get worse under these conditions. So these conditions have to change.
So how do you think they should change?
Like I said, if you abolish private property, I mean, what you have right now is you have a situation where you have automatic production, or increasingly automatic production, and tightly controlled distribution. And the distribution on the basis of wages, and the distribution of based on the wage system, and based on the market system, based on the fact that nothing that is produced today is no physical object that is produced today and circulated in human society is not a commodity. It's not an object for the market, right? Things are produced for their ability to sell them. They're not produced for the actual human value or the actual value they have to augment human life, right? I mean, because who are we without our tools? We are these small, frail creatures that don't have institutions, that don't have chairs, that don't have buildings, that don't have cameras, that don't have whatever. We're all kinds of things. Our tools, our language, our kind of common culture kind of stuff. That's what makes us, different than like squirrels or something. Squirrel life hasn't changed in 30 million years, right? Human life isn't what it was 30 years ago. So like this thing is constantly moving, and the prime mover in it is the advance of. There's so many different reasons why things change, but the technology, the technological center is key to it. Like you think about like terms of like history as a series of conquests, a series of bloody murder and exploitation, and the basis for racism and all kinds of other things, right? Still require tools to do that. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. If you think about history as a series of patriarchal relationships and the oppression of women and being, the whole of humanity and society being built on the backs of women, it still required tools to do. It still required a home and this and that and as these things developed, it changed, right? So the history of tools, the foundation of that is a mover in society. It's how things kind of change, and that the fact of oppression doesn't change, but it's filtered through these things that are moving, right? And so, I don't know. I mean, now I'm just going on. I don't even know how that affects my work. That just affects what I'm saying right now. Yeah, it's hard to write about that kind of stuff in a poem.
So, kind of to pivot a little bit. So, talking about growing up in East Los Angeles, and you made a comment in a discussion we had last night saying that you would never want to leave East Los Angeles. Yeah. What makes East Los Angeles, what about your experiences in East Los Angeles make it so hard for you to disconnect?
Yeah. So I'm originally from El Sereno, just for like anyone like from that area that will make those distinctions. For most people, it's greater East LA, right? But what makes me not want to ever leave El Sereno, or that whole area, El Sereno, City Terrace, Boyle Heights, East LA, Highland Park, Lincoln Heights for sure. What makes me not want to like leave that area is that it's a hub for so much of Mexican American culture, and there are other ones like East San Jose, Pilsen in Chicago, the state of New Mexico, so much of southern Texas, and there's all kinds of different things, and they have their own local flavors, their own kind of things. But the heart of just that, like a lot of that, like Chicanismo, a lot of that fight back, a lot of that, that's where the moratorium was, that's where the walkouts were. There was all kinds of history, and like my family, there's like generations of my family, and they're members of my family. They're very politicized, right? But my family as a whole isn't really that political. They're just people just working and living. So, but they were there, almost like Forrest Gump or something like that. Like my mom was there during the walkouts, and she went to Wilson, which was the first school to walk out. My mom was there on a double date at the Chicano moratorium, right? Not even thinking about what it was, And so like the living history, whether or not they raised a fist or not, they were there. It's not like it was something you opt in or out of. It's just you are who you are, and just to be a part of that, and to be at the almost like to be a central pivotal part of that, to be there where so much took place, and so many things are. To just draw strength from that, and it is separate and distinct from the umbrella category of like Latinos, because that there are things that are Latino and that apply to everyone. Like when Sebastian De La Cruz, right, who's Mexican American, was singing the national anthem at the Spurs game and then got booed, right? And that could happen to a Puerto Rican, that could happen to a Cuban, that could happen to someone who's Peruvian, that could happen to any of us, right? And so that's a Latino moment, as well as a Mexican moment. When the same thing happened to Jose Feliciano back in the 70s, when he's singing the American national anthem, that's a Latino moment, as well as when Mark Anthony, all of them cross over. That's kind of something that we can all get on board with, but it is still very Puerto Rican, right? So it's very Puerto Rican, it's very Boricua, and something we're all kind of a part of, but it's specifically that, right? So there are things that are that, and there's things that belong to all of us, and there's things that are distinct and separate. Or not specifically separate, but they're distinct. They have its own kind of thing, and to be part of that, to be part of like the land of all the murals, and to be part of that, to be part of Los Angeles, the history of Los Angeles, which is one of the largest global cities in the world, one of the, wherever. But it began with a group of people who were coming from Nueva España, who were like only like maybe 17 families. They came there, coming from the land that would become Mexico, and they founded a pueblo there, and that, to me, is fascinating. But the kind of undiscussed piece of history sometimes, though, is who were they, though? Those people that came up, like half of them. There's a list next to them describing what they were, and half of them, and just using the language that's on there, said either negro or mulatto. So these were Afro-Mexicanos. Half of them, right? And the other half were like Indio or Mestizo. And there's 2 people there listed as Español. There's only 2 people listed as like Spanish. Almost everybody there was either black or brown, And so that's, a fascinating piece of LA history. Like this Los Angeles, it's La La Land, right? Mm-hmm. Sold to us as La La Land is actually a city founded by black and brown Mexicanos, and right now there's so much tension between these communities, but it's kind of a beautiful thing to think about that when you think about LA being founded, like saying that well, half the Mexicans were black and all the blacks were Mexican, like it's kind of a beautiful thing. I don't know.
All right. So discuss a little bit more about kind of the art in East Los Angeles, and kind of not just art being murals, but any form of artistic expression kind of shaping the culture of East LA.
Well, there's poetry, there's hip hop, there's.
And where do you fall into that? Where do you feel like you fall into that?
Where do I fall into that? Well, I was born in El Sereno. There's I'm one of the people that, you know, whenever I was the Mito put out this thing before they got really big, it's like, you know, 8 Latino poets to follow, and I was like the first one. So that's kind of cool, right? I've worked a lot with Luis Rodriguez, who in many ways popularized a lot of things. People put a spotlight on that with his book, Always Running, and so like I'm really happy. I'm kind of happy to be part of that legacy and part of that tradition and history. It's an interesting thing to think about. Like, what is your place in the world, you know? Like, and what is your place in something? Because, you know, you start with these ambitions, and then you achieve certain things, then you realize, because you got like this hunger and this need in you, right? And for recognition, for to be seen, and I'm not saying this in a cynical way. I'm just saying this in like a human way, right? And then when you get some of it, you realize that you're still you, and whatever hole that was in you that needed to be filled, it's never going to be filled. Like you have to just love yourself and do the work. And like achieving things isn't going to make you love yourself any more than anything else. So me, I come from that of having had things kind of rough when I was young, and having this kind of like hole in myself. I try to fill it with alcohol. I try to fill it with a lot of things, it's that never worked. So how do I feel about having succeeded at a certain level to try to get the things I want? It's a difficult question, because sometimes I feel good and sometimes I don't. You know, sometimes I feel good and sometimes I feel like sometimes it brings me pain. Like, you know, it brings me pain because it conflicts with my self-image. It conflicts. My self-image isn't constant, though. You know what I mean? And I'm talking about myself right now, but I'm talking about all of us. Our self-image isn't constant. Sometimes we feel good, sometimes we feel bad. You know, and sometimes it feels like great, like I did it. Yes, I did it. You know, I set a goal and I did it, and I'm happy, I'm proud. I'm like, that's my name, damn it, right? And then other times I feel like sad and depressed about having achieved my goals, because it reminds me of having felt like I didn't deserve them, which reminds me of feeling like I'm not whatever. So I know you asked me a cultural question about like some big thing, and I'm getting into this like personal like sad story.
You're good.
But it's a difficult thing to be an artist. It's a very difficult thing to be a working artist, because to be a working artist, to be an artist is to draw from the world, you know, input in your ear and output your mouth, right? To think about the world and see it into your eyes, into your ears, and absorb it, and then create something with it, and then share something that's recognizable to people, right? To them, and to yourself. That's what it is to be an artist. But then to be a working artist is to be a worker. And it's to suffer the slings and arrows of a capitalist economy, you know? But you're doing it with your heart in your hand. You know, you're doing it with your heart in your hand, and not with just like, look at what my hands can do. They can move these things around. Look at my skill set. You're doing it with like bearing your soul on your sleeves and being like, buy this. And someone's like, no, I don't want that. It's like, oh. So it's a rare combination of having the sensitivity to be an artist and having the nerve, the steely-eyed nerve to be an entrepreneur. You know, which and I say that I'm not celebrating entrepreneurship. I'm not celebrating merchants. I'm not celebrating that. I come from a family of men who like did not want to work for anyone else, right? Who were driven to like own their own businesses, to start their own businesses, to do that, you know, it's in many ways it's admirable. In some ways it's not. I mean, because some of the things that they're required of that are you know. So, and I'm no different. It's kind of funny, like you know, everyone's a small business guy, including the communists. You know, like in my family. So that's just that's how it is.
So you talked about some of kind of the hardships you endured throughout your younger years. So how, first, what experiences do you draw from more often than others? And what about them makes you revisit those times, those memories?
Well, I was born in 1981, so like a lot of formative years. I grew up in El Sereno, and my parents got divorced when I was young, and so they ended up having split joint custody, meaning half and half, Wednesday to Wednesday. And my father lived in May with my mom in El Sereno. She got married. We moved out to the burbs, but in my time, in the 80s, growing up as a kid, this was like a very violent time, much more so than today. I mean, people are always like, we need to ramp up the prisons because there's more street crime, and that's actually not true. The high peak in most of our lifetimes was the 1980s. I mean, this is when they started, and this is because the CIA started putting drugs in the community, and the east side of LA was no different. It wasn't as bad as the south. It wasn't as bad with the crack. It was much more like PCP. It was much more whatever. So in some ways, though not as prevalent, though not as many people hooked on PCP as were hooked on crack, in South LA. PCP is such a scary drug. It's such a scary drug to people around it. We're talking about like a drug that can flip over cars and stuff. So anyways, I grew up with the sounds of gunshots, like every night. And I know there's parts of gunshots that's still very true. There's gunshots every night, but but I grew up with the sounds of gunshots. I mean, whether or not that's still true, whether or not that's happening elsewhere, and it's still happening today. Why are you saying all of that 80s? Well, whatever. I mean, I grew up with the sounds of gunshots every night, relatively often. So that was pretty traumatic. And me and my father, we haven't always had the best relationship. It's been rough. I mean, right now I'm trying to make peace with him, and my grandfather just died yesterday. So I mean, that was pretty painful. Thinking about all of that, but. I think about my father and his life and my life in the context of having grown up in a country that made it hard. Made it hard. I made it hard on the one end because we're working people, and made it hard on the end because we are a group of people who, specifically a group of people who lost a war 100 years ago and are still paying the price for it. And so that's kind of what it's been. And I've had, it's interesting, like, because to talk about the racist experiences, where it wasn't growing up where I experienced a lot of racism. I mean, I did, but it was different. It's like structural, It's not till later today that I deal with. It wasn't until got a job and started going out into the world and into the community that I started experiencing this tremendous amounts of you're not supposed to be here. You must be an affirmative action hire, that sort of thing, right? And it's as I go further and further along in my career that I experience more of it. You know what I'm saying? So no one has a problem with me when I show up at East LA College. No one has a problem with me showing up, in a community college in Arizona that mostly service Latino populations. No one has a problem with me doing these things, right? They have a problem with me being at Loyola. They have a problem with me being at some of these smaller elite campuses that nobody's ever heard of because of such a legacy students. They have a problem with me being in the places that are reserved for intelligent white people. That must be affirmative action hire. I mean, you only hear your last name, right? Of course, I understand. And that gets me so angry because I think about how much harder I had to work to be there than the people saying that. How much harder I had to work. How much harder it would be for me to get here than you, your nephew, the nephew of the person telling me I'm an affirmative action hire. You know what I'm saying? These are the. I mean, especially when we talk about the academia. These are the inheritors of some of the most egregious nepotism in the country in academia. I mean, it's just the most egregious somebody's nephew or cousin or whatever, and your so-and-so was a celebrated scholar, so I guess, maybe they did do a lot of good work. But that means that you are now my boss, just because of that. And so that sort of thing goes on all throughout quote unquote, academia and in the quote unquote life of the American mind. And you have the nerve to turn around and say to me, you're affirmative action hire. That's just, that kind of.
Okay. So what's next? What's next? for
What's
you?
next? What's next? What is next? What is next is I get back and I do Harvey Mudd College in Claremont. No. What's next? I go back and I do Chapman University, and then Harvey Mudd the next few days. So what's next? I get on a plane and then I get like a couple hours sleep. I wake up and I go do Chapman, and then after that I do Harvey Mudd, and then I'm off to Seattle.
Okay. So what's next as far as like the next iteration of your work?
Next, look out for The Same Stretch of Sidewalk, which will be another collection of poetry. Also, go check out the Southwest Political Port, which is a blog that I run with my fiance, Dr. Rena Sanchez, which has been really an incredible experience to be able to work with someone who I'm getting married to.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, she's incredible. She's incredible. I mean, it was really. I came up with the name, but it was really more. A lot of it was just her pushing to get it done. I mean, so much of our relationships thus far has been one of pushing each other and encouraging each other, and really being that extra thing. Because she's a writer. She's also a poet. She's an academic as well, and she's.
How long has she been writing for?
She's been writing for a couple of years now. She's been writing since she was a kid. But she's been kind of putting out some poetry that's a little more recent. But she's been writing scholarly stuff for a long time. In her doctorate. Right. So that's a difficult thing too, though. I mean, to actually like to string together essays and opinions and scholarly research and say like, this is true, and intelligent. Look at it and read it. I mean, that's a very difficult thing as well, to put yourself out there in that kind of way, and to be judged for your intelligence and insight, right? So that's hard. That takes a lot out of somebody to constantly struggle and jockey for a position or to have a voice in that world, and so like that, can rack you with all kinds of insecurities. So like I try to be there to help her out in kind of ways and provide a support in the same way that it's very difficult to like write down pretty words and like say, look at my pretty words, but they're also meaningful and they also like blah, blah, blah. And I'm a poet and celebrate me and celebrate my art. It's very hard to put yourself out in the world like that. So in many ways, she supports me and holds me up. So it's good to have that, because life is hard.
Yeah. So how do you navigate kind of the differences between how say your wife or your fiance approaches her work within this movement and how you do it? Because it seems to me that y'all have like two very distinct styles of kind of conveying a message.
Well, we're doing kind of the same thing, but it's like let's say somebody has a double major, right? And like they're majoring in like sociology, communications, or they're majoring in sociology, minoring in communications. Someone else is majoring in communications, minoring in sociology. It's more like that. It's like like she writes poetry, but that's like not necessarily
the forefront
of her work at this point in time. And that may change. And I write articles, but that's not necessarily the forefront of what I do.
Okay. Do you see that kind of changing in the future, where y'all could potentially switch and you veer into more academic spaces and she veers into more artistic spaces?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, she's a really good poet. She's a really, really good poet. She's a really good poet. And my political essays are fire. So, so no, she's a great multi-talented person. It's just that she developed one thing kind of first more, and me too. Okay. And I did the opposite. So it's really cool. It's great because like in terms of just like, we're talking about being productive and producing work, and that's just one thing. That's just like the content of your mind and finding the time of day and doing things to actually produce things, right? But in terms of navigating the world, that's a bunch of like networks, contacts, who do you know, how you know them, all that kind of stuff like that, right? And so like there are a lot of people I know that she doesn't, and there are a lot of people she knows that I don't. So like it helps to be able to introduce people to people that can help her, and have her introduce me to people that can help me, that I did not know, and that she did not know. So. It's like a team effort, and like I said, life is hard, and she's a child from previous marriage, and so like I'm like a stepdad now, and that's hard too, because like I think of this boy, and and what it means for him to grow up in the era of Trump, you know, and what does that mean? What will that mean? What will that bring? And what will he be faced with? Because I remember when I was 7 years old, and my dad told me I could never be president, you know, and what that meant. And I remember when they put up a brick wall near my house where I was growing up with my grandma, and they put up a brick wall, and then they put barbed wire over the wall. You know, it was a fruteria, and we could walk across a dirt lot and buy fruit. And then the developers came in and they built up, you know, liquor stores and stuff, and they put up a brick wall to stop us from, you know, just walking across. And after that, they put barbed wire to make sure we didn't climb the wall. And to be a child and to just see that, you know what I'm saying? To be like, have gone from living in a situation where it was like, you know, it's a dirt lot, or it's kind of like almost like a piece of Mexico, right? Like there, you know? For that to turn into basically a prison, a little piece of America. You know, because I mean, like, it's a brick wall with barbed wire, you know? What are you telling me? What are you telling me? Yeah, so that was how I learned what it meant, you know?
So how long have y'all two known each other, you and your fiance?
Pretty quick, dude. Like, let's see, May 1st will be 1 year, so. Yeah.
1 year. 1 year on May 1st.
Yeah, 1 year, May 1st, so that's you know, it's pretty quick. It's pretty quick. But you know, when you know, you know. But anyways, so like to me, like that was when I found out what it meant to be who I am in this country. And I worry, you know, he's 5, he's gonna be 5 soon, and
What's his name?
what will it mean? Gets up?
Okay.
And what will it mean? What will it mean for him, and how will we approach that? You know, and I mean, he knows he's Mexican, Guatemalan, like he knows that, right? That's background. That's background, but that doesn't mean anything to him yet. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes he says, like, you know, like, I mean, he says things like I'm brown or something like that, or just like I'm, you know, like, you know, whatever. But you know, I don't know. So I think about that. I think about like how I learned, and I think about like how will he learn, and I think about how he will learn and how much harsher it will be for him because the climate is that much worse. You know what I'm saying? Like, people talk about racism as like this kind of thing where like things are continually getting better all the time. Like, well, first of all, I mean, there are many historical questions, right? Like, there's not just one brand of racism. There's not just a stamp called racism, right? There's like all kinds of different things, right? And when you talk about the experience of Mexican Americans in this country, or in this country, there's only somewhere else with the Mexican Americans. When you talk about the experience of Mexican Americans, it's a question of like, you know, the quote unquote Mexican question, right? And the answer to the Mexican question is always fuck them, right? Like, fuck them, right? But, you know, I hate those people, right? That's the answer to the Mexican question. That's the American answer to the Mexican question. I hate them. But it's not always in the forefront of American politics. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of the background, it's here, it's there, right? It's in pockets, you know? With the election of Donald Trump, I had no idea that you could say the things that would get you elected in Arizona, in Minnesota. You know, I didn't know that you could say the things that get you elected in Orange County in Pennsylvania. Like, I didn't know they hated us. You know what I'm saying? Because every time I'm on the East Coast, I just feel like I don't exist. When I'm on the East Coast, I feel like they're having this national conversation that does not include me. You know, it's like they're like, I feel like a Christmas Carol. Like you're like Scrooge and you're watching these things and people are talking and they're like, you know, well, here in America, blah, blah, blah. And we're like, excuse me. And they're like, and here in America, where are things going in this country? And it's like this kind of like thing that where you don't really get included. And when they do talk about you, they say you are the Ellis Island of the West or something like that. Just weird like superimposition of you are like us except you're you. You are a version of us. You know? I mean, that's just so ridiculous. I don't even know how to like, if I were to say that Ellis Island is the Rio Grande of the East Coast, people would, what do you mean? Like, you know, like I would never say something stupid like that or ridiculous like that. But like that, that they think they do that all the time. They think like, what an ingenious statement. I identified the Ellis Island of like California. I always wondered what it was. No, places are themselves and people are themselves. So I never knew that you could just be like, we're gonna build a wall and Mexico will pay, and people in Maine would be like, yeah. That was news to me. Yeah. So anyways, so that's why things are changing. I think there's some changes, and it's because of the demographic shift. But
Well, I have no more questions for you. Do you have anything that you would like to talk about, or anything that like you feel like I didn't cover?
No. I feel like you asked me some really fantastic questions, and I answered them, and then I went off on tangents because I've gotten a kind of lack of sleep, and anytime I'm outside of California, I always want to emphasize how important this history is. I mean, like here, I've been here, I've been listening and learning so much, so much about Florida and how it really is part of the Deep South, even though they try to claim it's not. Even they try to like Disney World it anymore, and learning so much about just different portions of Florida, like the Panhandle versus this portion versus more towards the south versus more towards a little northern. I'm learning so much different regional things about here, and the struggles here in U of F to integrate the college and all these things. And it's just fascinating history. I'm very interested in it. Just a minute ago, I was talking to one of the doctoral candidates, and he was telling me about this question of Ottoman Greeks, and learning about the variation of the Greek migration here, and how they were not all one kind of thing, and how did Greek national formation come about, and learning about just different histories. I'm always fascinated about that. But when I have the opportunity to speak, when it comes to my time to speak, when I'm outside of California, I'm outside of like the Southwest in general, I always feel like I should be an advocate for the significance of the history of the Southwest and the significance of the Chicano experience in particular. And so like that's just kind of like where I'm at always, like at all times. Like when it's time for me to speak, I want to be an advocate for that. So the thing I would want to cover, the thing I would want to say is just that the Chicano history is U.S. history, and it is not just their history that matters to them, right? So when someone will say something like that, they'll be like, well, do you know Mendez versus Westminster happened a couple of years before Brown versus Board of Education? Did you know that? And they're like, aha, like that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fact that this stuff is not just our history, it's everyone's history. For instance, most people don't know who Ernesto Miranda is. Most people know they have the right to remain silent and a right to an attorney. They don't know who Ernesto Miranda is. They don't know where that name Miranda comes from. It comes from a case called Miranda versus Arizona. This is your history too. This is all our history too. This is a collective history that belongs to everyone, and it doesn't just affect those people over there.
Well, I have no more questions. So I conclude the interview. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.